Many believe that speaking more demonstrates intelligence, confidence, and authority. However, the individuals who exert the greatest influence are often those who choose their words carefully. In every conversation, there are those who speak impulsively and those who observe, process, and respond with intention. The latter always hold the advantage. This book is not about remaining silent, but about developing the discipline to speak with purpose. Too often, people engage in conversations reactively, filling space with words rather than using silence strategically. They overlook valuable details, make themselves predictable, and lose control over discussions that could shape their personal and professional success. Gaining a deeper understanding of people and situations begins with refining one's ability to listen, observe, and analyze before responding. Communication extends beyond words. Tone, body language, and subtle pauses often reveal more than what is explicitly stated. Those who train themselves to recognize these details develop a level of awareness that enables them to navigate conversations with greater clarity and precision. This book presents a practical framework for mastering this skill. It explores how to command attention without demanding it, earn respect without seeking validation, and influence discussions without dominating them. By implementing these principles, readers will learn how to collect more information than they reveal, make sounder decisions, and cultivate a presence that naturally commands authority. Every interaction offers an opportunity to gain insight, yet most people diminish their impact by speaking too much and listening too little. The strategies outlined in this book will help reverse that pattern. By the end, readers will have the tools to enhance their ability to communicate effectively, understand others more deeply, and project a quiet confidence that speaks louder than words. Whether in leadership, negotiations, or personal relationships, the ability to listen, think, and respond with intention is a skill that sets the truly influential apart. Chapter 1: How to Speak Less and Influence More. In a world that constantly demands our attention, it's easy to assume that the key to success, influence, and respect lies in speaking as much as possible. We're taught to fill the silence, to dominate conversations, to ensure that our voices are heard. But here's the twist: the most powerful people aren't always the loudest. In fact, the people who speak the least often influence the most. Think about it. How many times have you walked into a room where one person's mere presence was enough to grab everyone's attention, without them even uttering a word? This kind of influence comes from the art of restraint, from choosing to speak only when it truly matters. When we talk less, we free ourselves up to listen more, to absorb the world around us, to understand others better, and ultimately to influence in a way that feels natural and powerful. The truth is, the less you say, the more others are likely to listen. True influence isn't about dominating a conversation, it's about knowing when to speak, and perhaps even more importantly, knowing when to remain silent. In moments of silence, you create space for reflection, space for deeper understanding, and space for others to contribute. The person who fills the silence with their own voice might be heard, but the person who allows the silence to linger, then speaks with purpose, commands attention. One of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that their words will always carry weight, simply because they speak often. But words lose their value when they're used too freely. On the other hand, when we speak less, when we choose our words carefully, when we make sure every word counts, we build a reputation for having something important to say. People will begin to listen to you because they know your words have meaning. Every sentence you utter will be a reflection of your thoughtfulness, your ability to understand, and your capacity to see things others might miss. When you talk less, you give yourself the chance to listen. And in listening, you gain an incredible amount of information. You begin to understand people on a deeper level, You catch the nuances in their words, the small hesitations, the body language that speaks louder than any sentence ever could. You gain insights into their emotions, their struggles, their desires, things they may not even realize they're revealing. As you listen more, you become more attuned to the unspoken truths in a room. The ability to observe without rushing to respond gives you an edge, both in conversations and in life. In negotiations, for example, silence can be one of your greatest allies. The natural instinct when faced with tension or an awkward pause is to rush in with words. But this often works against us. Silence, on the other hand, creates pressure, and with that pressure comes the opportunity to learn more. When you stay quiet and wait, others often feel compelled to speak more, to fill the silence with their own thoughts. In those moments, they may reveal something valuable, something they hadn't planned on saying. By simply holding back and letting others speak, you can gain crucial information that might help you make better decisions. The power of listening goes beyond just gathering information. It's also about showing respect. People appreciate being heard. They feel validated when you take the time to truly understand what they're saying. This fosters trust, and trust is the foundation of influence. When people trust you, they are more likely to listen to you when you do speak. It's a cycle. You listen, you build trust, and because they trust you, they will value your words more when you choose to share them. Every conversation is an opportunity to deepen your understanding of the world around you. The more you listen, the more you learn. You'll start to notice patterns in people's behavior, subtle shifts in their emotions, and even their unspoken needs. You'll find that you're able to relate to people in a way you never thought possible. This kind of understanding opens doors for you, doors to better relationships, more successful business dealings, and deeper personal connections. But it's not just about listening. It's about listening with intent, with purpose. This is where the true power of speaking less comes into play. When you listen intently, you not only learn more about the person speaking, but you also give yourself the chance to think. Thinking before you speak allows you to respond thoughtfully and carefully, rather than reacting impulsively. It gives you time to process what's being said, to weigh the implications, and to choose the most appropriate response. In doing so, you become someone who speaks with purpose, a person who isn't afraid of silence because you understand the power it holds. And this is where you gain your influence. When you've spent more time listening and thinking, when you've observed the world around you more closely, your words take on a new kind of weight. They come from a place of understanding, not just knowledge, and people respect that. They respect someone who speaks only when it's necessary, who doesn't waste words, who carefully considers the impact of what they say before they say it. There's a certain kind of wisdom that comes from speaking less. The more you learn to hold back, the more you come to realize that not everything needs to be said. The pressure to fill every silence, to make your voice heard, begins to fade, and in its place, a quiet confidence emerges. You begin to understand that your influence doesn't come from talking the most, but from talking the least, and talking with purpose. This wisdom doesn't come overnight. It requires practice, patience, and a commitment to change. But the results are worth it. When you speak less, you open up the space for others to contribute. You make room for meaningful conversations that foster connection, trust, and respect. You show that you value others' input, that you understand their perspective, and that you're not just waiting for your turn to speak, but actively engaging in the exchange of ideas. The power of speaking less isn't about being silent for the sake of silence. It's about being intentional with your words. Choosing to speak only when you have something valuable to contribute. When you embrace this approach, you'll find that you not only influence others more, but you also improve your own life. You begin to see the world more clearly, to understand people on a deeper level, and to communicate with more impact. As you start practicing this discipline of speaking less, you'll notice a shift in the way people respond to you. They'll start listening more closely when you do speak. They'll respect your thoughts and opinions more, and they'll come to trust you in ways they didn't before. The more you embrace the art of restraint, the more you'll realize that influence isn't something you have to fight for. It's something that naturally comes to you when you learn to speak less and understand more. Chapter 2. The Observer's Mind. How to See What Others Miss. In a world full of noise and distractions, it's easy to forget how much we can learn by simply paying attention to what's going on around us. Every day we're surrounded by messages, body language, and subtle cues that tell us more than words ever could. If we can train ourselves to observe, we start to see the world through a different lens, one that reveals insights and opportunities that others might miss. Observation isn't just about watching people, it's about understanding them. It's about noticing the small details that reveal what someone might be thinking or feeling, even when they're not saying anything at all. It's the shift from being a passive bystander in conversations to being an active participant, someone who is fully aware of what's happening in the moment. When we stop focusing on what we're going to say next and start paying attention to what's happening around us, we tap into a well of knowledge that can guide us through any situation. Often we're so caught up in our own thoughts, in our own agendas, that we forget to look at the bigger picture. We miss the subtle shifts in body language, the hesitation in someone's voice, or the way their eyes light up when they talk about something they care about. These are the things that reveal who a person really is, what they truly think, and what motivates them. By training ourselves to observe these small moments, we start to develop a deeper understanding of the people around us, and more importantly, of ourselves. The key to mastering the observer's mind is to embrace curiosity. Instead of seeing the world through the lens of our own needs and desires, we begin to look at it from the perspective of others. When we approach people, conversations and situations with genuine curiosity, we open ourselves up to new perspectives. We stop assuming that we know everything, and instead we begin to ask questions, to listen more deeply, and to truly see what's going on beneath the surface. This is especially powerful in conversations. So often we enter conversations with a predetermined idea of what we want to say or what we want to get out of it. But when we shift our focus from speaking to observing, we allow the conversation to unfold naturally. We become more present in the moment, more attuned to the other person's emotions, thoughts, and needs. This not only makes us better listeners, but it also makes us better communicators. We can respond more thoughtfully, more empathetically, and with a deeper understanding of what's really being said. Sometimes, we don't even realize how much information is available to us simply by observing. Think about the last time you had a conversation with someone and noticed their body language. Maybe their arms were crossed, their eyes were darting around the room, or they seemed a little distracted. These small signs speak volumes about what someone is thinking or feeling, even though they might not be saying anything. When you learn to read these cues, you gain a much clearer understanding of the other person's perspective. You can then adjust your responses accordingly, creating a more meaningful and productive exchange. Being an observer doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means being actively engaged in the moment, noticing the things that others might overlook, and using that information to inform your actions and decisions. It means practicing mindfulness, focusing on the present, and letting go of distractions. By doing so, you begin to develop a deeper awareness of the world around you, which can help you navigate even the most challenging situations with confidence and clarity. One of the greatest benefits of cultivating the observer's mind is the ability to anticipate what will happen next. When we observe people carefully, we begin to notice patterns in their behavior. We start to recognize how they react to certain situations, what triggers their emotions, and what motivates their decisions. This insight allows us to anticipate their needs and responses, giving us a strategic advantage in both personal and professional situations. Imagine walking into a room where a conversation is already underway. Most people would immediately jump in, eager to contribute their own thoughts. But if you take a moment to observe, you'll start to notice the dynamics at play. Who's speaking the most? Who seems to be holding back? What is the tone of the conversation? By taking note of these subtle cues, you can adjust your approach and enter the conversation at the right moment, with the right words, and in the right way. The observer's mind also helps us develop emotional intelligence. When we pay attention to the emotions and body language of others, we gain a better understanding of how they're feeling and what they might need. This allows us to connect with them on a deeper level, to offer support when needed, and to navigate complex social situations with ease. Emotional intelligence is a skill that can be learned through observation and practice, and it's one that can make a huge difference in our personal and professional relationships. But observation isn't just about reading people, it's also about observing ourselves. When we take the time to reflect on our own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, we gain a deeper understanding of who we are and how we show up in the world. This self-awareness is crucial for personal growth, as it allows us to identify areas where we might be holding ourselves back or acting out of fear or insecurity. By observing ourselves with curiosity and compassion, we can begin to make more intentional choices, align our actions with our values, and live more authentically. Being an observer also means being patient. We live in a world that rewards quick reactions, fast responses, and instant gratification, but the most successful people are often the ones who take the time to think things through, to consider all the options, and to make decisions with care. By practicing patience and giving ourselves the space to observe and reflect, we gain clarity and insight that can lead to better decision-making and more thoughtful actions. The observer's mind is not something that can be developed overnight. It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to let go of our own preconceived notions. But the rewards are worth it. As we become more observant, we begin to see the world in a new light. We notice the things that others miss. We understand people on a deeper level, and we become better communicators, better decision makers, and more empathetic human beings. Ultimately, cultivating the observer's mind is about becoming more present in the world. It's about slowing down, being more mindful, and giving ourselves the time and space to truly understand what's happening around us. It's about learning to listen, not just with our ears but with our eyes, our intuition, and our hearts. When we do this, we open ourselves up to new possibilities, new insights, and new opportunities that we might have otherwise missed. Chapter 3. Speak less. Think faster. The secret to mental clarity. There's a certain power in clarity. When our minds are cluttered, everything seems difficult. Every decision is harder, every conversation feels like a struggle, and every action becomes a challenge. We often find ourselves stuck in cycles of overthinking, unsure of what to do next, overwhelmed by too many thoughts competing for attention. But when our minds are clear, things flow naturally. We make decisions more easily. We communicate more effectively, and we move through the world with confidence. The connection between speaking less and thinking faster is simple. The less we fill our minds with unnecessary chatter, the more room we have to think clearly and make better decisions. Our thoughts can become like a jumble of wires, tangled and disorganized, when we try to hold on to everything at once. When we learn to filter out the noise, we give ourselves the space to think deeply and strategically. This isn't about quieting the mind entirely. It's about learning how to focus on what truly matters and letting go of distractions that don't serve us. Clarity comes from simplicity. When we start simplifying our thoughts, we start simplifying our actions. It's like walking into a messy room, full of clutter. If we try to clean the entire room all at once, it feels impossible. But if we start by focusing on one corner, clearing it step by step, the task becomes manageable. This principle applies to our thinking as well. When we clear away the mental clutter and focus on one thought or idea at a time, we create the mental space needed for clear and quick thinking. In the midst of our busy lives, it's easy to become overwhelmed by everything we have to do, everything we need to say, and everything we feel. We rush through our days, thinking that the faster we speak, the faster we'll get things done. But this often leads to mistakes and wasted energy. When we slow down and choose our words carefully, we can think more clearly and act with intention. By speaking less, we allow our minds the time and space to catch up with what's happening around us. There's a trick to mental clarity, one that many overlook: slowing down. In today's fast-paced world, the idea of slowing down feels counterintuitive. But when we take the time to pause, when we allow ourselves to think before we speak or act, we access a deeper level of understanding. We start to see things more clearly. Our thoughts become sharper, our decisions more confident, and our interactions with others more meaningful. One of the greatest obstacles to mental clarity is the constant flood of information we receive every day. We're bombarded with emails, texts, social media notifications, and the endless stream of thoughts and ideas that come from all directions. It's easy to get caught up in this information overload, to feel like we need to absorb everything and keep up with the latest trends or conversations. But when we let go of the need to keep up with everything, we make room for the things that truly matter. We free up mental energy that we can focus on what's important: our goals, our relationships, and our values. Thinking faster isn't about rushing. It's about thinking with purpose. It's about being able to sift through the noise quickly and focus on what's necessary. When we remove distractions and simplify our thoughts, we become more efficient thinkers. We stop wasting time on things that don't matter, and we start directing our energy toward what will move us forward. The less we speak, the more we can observe, and the more we observe, the more we can process. This creates a feedback loop that enhances our ability to think quickly and act with clarity. By listening first, we gain more information than we would if we were constantly speaking. We can assess the situation with a clearer mind because we've taken the time to absorb all the relevant details. One of the most effective ways to achieve mental clarity is to create habits that promote stillness and focus. When we start our day with intention, whether it's through meditation, journaling, or simply taking a moment of quiet reflection, we give ourselves the opportunity to clear our minds before the chaos of the day begins. By setting aside time to reflect and clear away distractions, we prepare ourselves to think with more clarity and purpose throughout the day. Throughout the day, we can reinforce this practice by taking small breaks to check in with ourselves. These moments of pause allow us to reset and refocus. In those brief moments of stillness, we make room for fresh insights and ideas. We stop forcing ourselves to think under pressure and instead allow our minds to settle into a more natural flow. Mental clarity also improves when we simplify the way we approach our goals. Rather than trying to accomplish everything at once, we can focus on one task at a time. By breaking down our objectives into smaller, more manageable steps, We reduce the mental clutter and increase our ability to think strategically. We stop getting overwhelmed by the big picture and start focusing on what's in front of us. Thinking faster doesn't mean rushing through life or decisions. It's about having the mental clarity to make swift and confident choices when it matters. When we cultivate this clarity, we gain the ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances, to pivot when necessary, and to move forward with purpose. We no longer need to second-guess ourselves because we've taken the time to clear our minds and prioritize what truly matters. In conversations, the same principle applies. When we speak less, we give ourselves the space to think before we respond. This leads to more thoughtful, effective communication. We don't feel the need to fill every silence with words. Instead, we wait for the right moment to speak, knowing that our words will have more weight because we've taken the time to think them through. This can be incredibly powerful in both personal and professional situations. By pausing before we respond, we give ourselves the opportunity to consider our words carefully, and as a result, we communicate with greater clarity and impact. The more we practice this skill of thinking before we speak, the faster we become at processing information. The key is not to force speed, but to build the habit of thoughtful observation and response. Over time, we develop the ability to think quickly without the stress or pressure of having to come up with the perfect answer immediately. Our minds become more agile, more capable of handling complexity, and more skilled at cutting through confusion to find clarity. The true strength of mental clarity is in its ability to guide us through life's complexities. When our minds are clear, we can navigate challenges with confidence, we make better decisions, have more meaningful conversations, and feel more at ease in the world. It's not about speed for the sake of speed. It's about having the clarity to move through life with intention, to act with purpose, and to achieve our goals without the burden of mental clutter. Every time we practice speaking less and thinking more, we build our capacity for mental clarity. We strip away the unnecessary, and what remains is the essence of what truly matters. With this focus, we not only make better decisions, but we also become more in tune with ourselves and others. We become more efficient thinkers, better listeners, and more effective communicators. The faster we learn to think with clarity, the more we unlock the power of our minds to shape the world around us. Chapter 4. The Quiet Genius: Why Less Talk Leads to More Success. When you observe the most successful people in any field, there's something remarkable about their approach. It's not always about speaking the most or having the loudest voice. In fact, it's often the opposite. The quiet achievers, the ones who lead with actions rather than words, tend to create more lasting impact. There's a hidden power in silence, in restraint. The less they speak, the more they accomplish. And this isn't by accident. It's a purposeful choice that leads to greater success. The idea of the quiet genius may seem paradoxical at first. How could speaking less possibly lead to more success? Isn't it the people who are constantly talking, selling their ideas, making themselves known who rise to the top? The truth, however, is that speaking less doesn't mean being less involved or less engaged. In fact, it often means the opposite. It's about being strategic with your words, knowing when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. It's about making your words count. It's the art of speaking with purpose and precision. When you speak less, your words hold more weight. People listen more closely when they know that every sentence you say is meaningful and intentional. They pay attention, not because you speak all the time, but because they know that when you do speak, it's for a reason. This kind of approach makes you stand out in any room. It's easy to blend in when you're constantly speaking, but when you choose your words carefully, people begin to take notice of your wisdom and insight. They value your opinion, because they know it's not just noise. This approach to speaking less requires a deep level of discipline. It's easy to get caught up in the habit of filling silence with words, of talking simply because you're unsure of how to be quiet. But the power lies in the moments of silence, in the spaces between words. The quiet genius understands this. They understand that silence is not a void to be filled, but a powerful tool that allows others to think, reflect, and absorb. They understand that the less they speak, the more they allow others to process and contribute, creating a richer, more meaningful conversation. Being quiet doesn't mean being passive or inactive. It doesn't mean sitting back and letting things happen. It means being deliberate in your actions and responses. It means knowing when to speak up and when to remain silent, knowing that your silence can be just as powerful, if not more so, than your words. By speaking less, you give yourself the space to think more, to listen more, and to truly understand what's happening around you. This understanding allows you to make decisions that are more informed, more strategic, and ultimately more successful. The quiet genius also understands the value of listening. By speaking less, you open yourself up to hearing more. You become a better listener, which is a skill that's often overlooked. People feel heard when you listen actively, when you give them the space to express their thoughts without constantly interrupting or steering the conversation in your direction. In doing so, you build stronger relationships, gain more trust, and learn more about the people around you. This not only helps you in your personal life, but it can also elevate your career. People want to work with someone who listens, who understands their needs and concerns, not just someone who dominates the conversation with their own agenda. There's another benefit to speaking less. You free up mental space. When we're constantly talking, we're filling our minds with external noise. We're not giving ourselves the opportunity to reflect or process information. By speaking less, we allow ourselves to think more clearly, to understand situations more deeply, and to make decisions with greater precision. This kind of mental clarity is essential for success, whether you're leading a team, running a business, or simply trying to navigate through life's challenges. The quiet mind is a sharp mind, one that can see the bigger picture and make thoughtful, calculated choices. In the workplace, speaking less can be a game changer. Many people think that to succeed, they need to be the loudest, the most visible. But often, the most successful individuals are the ones who sit back, observe, and speak only when necessary. They don't feel the need to fill every silence with words. They wait for the right moment to offer their thoughts, and when they do, their contributions are thoughtful, impactful, and highly valued. People tend to gravitate toward those who have a calm, measured presence, who can think before they speak and make informed, confident decisions. This same principle applies to leadership. The best leaders are often not the ones who are constantly talking. They are the ones who take the time to listen, to reflect, and to act with intention. They don't speak to hear themselves talk. They speak to guide, to inspire, and to provide direction. They understand the importance of silence in leadership. It gives them the space to think, to observe their team, and to make decisions that will drive success. Silence is not a weakness. In fact, it's a strength. It allows you to control the flow of conversations, to steer discussions in the direction you want them to go without dominating or overbearing others. It gives you the space to think, to observe, and to act with clarity and confidence. In this way, speaking less leads to more success because it allows you to engage more deeply with the world around you, to make more informed decisions, and to build stronger, more meaningful connections with the people you encounter. As you embrace this quiet strength, you'll find that it starts to change the way you move through the world. You'll begin to see the power in restraint, the strength in silence. you'll realize that you don't need to speak constantly to make an impact. In fact, the more you speak, the less your words are heard. But when you learn to speak less, your words become more powerful. They become intentional, purposeful, and meaningful. And when that happens, success follows naturally. The quiet genius doesn't need to prove anything. Their success speaks for itself. By mastering the art of speaking less, they are able to create space for others to speak, for ideas to emerge, and for the right decisions to be made. They know that true influence doesn't come from the volume of your voice, but from the power of your presence and the impact of your words. The less they speak, the more they achieve. This is the essence of quiet success, understanding that silence is not a void, but a tool that allows us to create, to connect, and to lead with purpose. Chapter 5. How to control conversations without speaking. There's something remarkable about the way conversations unfold. We think we're in control, guiding the exchange with every word we speak, but often the true direction of the conversation is shaped by silence. Silence is powerful. It's not just the absence of sound, but a tool that can be used strategically to steer discussions and influence outcomes. It's in those moments of quiet that you can regain control of the conversation, allowing you to process information, observe others, and respond with purpose. When you learn to control conversations without speaking, you start to tap into a hidden layer of influence. Most people are quick to fill the silence with their own words. They rush to speak, to be heard, and in doing so, they lose the ability to listen, reflect, and observe. The real power, however, is in the moments when you choose not to speak, when you allow the conversation to unfold naturally. By staying quiet, you make room for others to share their thoughts, which in turn gives you more valuable information to work with. This shift in dynamic allows you to guide the conversation without ever needing to dominate it. The first step in mastering this art is understanding the power of pauses. In any conversation, there are natural pauses, those brief moments when both people stop talking, almost by instinct. Many of us feel uncomfortable in these moments, thinking we need to rush to fill the space with something, anything, to keep the flow going. But what happens when you don't fill that silence? What happens when you simply remain quiet and observe? The answer is that the other person often begins to speak more freely. They'll start to fill the space themselves, revealing more than they might have if you had jumped in to continue the conversation. People tend to talk more when they're not being interrupted. The pause gives them space to reflect, to reconsider, and to open up in ways they might not otherwise. This dynamic allows you to gather more information, process it, and make your next move with greater clarity. Silence also creates a sense of authority. When you speak less and control, when you speak, you are viewed as someone who is thoughtful, deliberate, and in control. You don't feel the need to talk over others or to rush through your point. Instead, you allow others to speak, absorb their words, and then respond with confidence and precision. This control over when and how you speak builds respect. People start to listen because they know that when you do speak, it's not just to fill the air, but to make a meaningful contribution. There's also the psychological aspect of silence. When we're not speaking, we're not just listening, we're observing, analyzing, and considering. In a conversation, this means paying attention to the other person's body language, tone, and emotions. Often, people reveal more in the silences between their words than in what they actually say. By not speaking, you give yourself the chance to notice these cues, which gives you an edge in understanding what's really going on. This insight allows you to respond more effectively, with empathy and awareness. You don't have to be silent for long periods to control the conversation. It's the strategic moments of quiet that matter. When you pause before responding, you give yourself time to gather your thoughts and choose the right words. This short, deliberate silence also forces the other person to wait, which in turn gives you more leverage. When you've cultivated the ability to control your response time, you've effectively gained control over the conversation itself. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the more we say, the more persuasive we are. But often, the opposite is true. The less you speak, the more weight your words carry. When you speak less, you're not only giving others the space to talk, but you're also signaling that your words are valuable. You don't need to fill every silence with something. Your thoughts and ideas become more impactful because you've chosen when and how to present them. Another benefit of controlling conversations with silence is that it allows you to stay calm and composed, even in tense or high-pressure situations. Many people rush to speak when they're nervous or uncomfortable. They feel the need to fill the silence with reassurance or explanations. But staying quiet in these moments gives you the opportunity to stay grounded. You don't need to rush your responses or try to fix things with your words. Instead, you take the time to think through your next move, to consider how best to respond, and to ensure that your words are aligned with your true intentions. In a business context, the ability to control conversations with silence is a game changer. Whether you're negotiating, pitching an idea, or leading a meeting, silence can be your greatest ally. In a negotiation, for example, the person who speaks less often has the upper hand. When you stop talking and let the other party speak, you gain more insight into their position, their concerns, and their goals. This information is invaluable as it allows you to craft your responses strategically, addressing their needs and concerns while also advocating for your own. In meetings, silence can be equally powerful. By allowing others to speak freely without interruption, you create an atmosphere of trust and respect. People are more likely to share their thoughts and ideas when they feel heard, and this gives you the opportunity to listen and respond with thoughtful input. Rather than dominating the conversation, you guide it through the questions you ask and the moments of quiet that invite reflection. Silence is also key to conflict resolution. When emotions are running high, the instinct may be to talk over the other person, to defend your position, or to push your point. However, by choosing silence, you allow the other person to express themselves fully. You give them the space to vent, to explain their perspective, and to feel heard. This alone can diffuse much of the tension and pave the way for a more productive conversation. When the time is right, you can step in with a well-thought-out response that addresses their concerns while also presenting your own. The key to mastering the art of controlling conversations without speaking is practice. It takes time to become comfortable with silence, especially in a world where we're encouraged to constantly speak and be heard. But the more you practice staying silent, the more natural it becomes. You'll find that the power of your words increases because they are carefully chosen and purposefully delivered. You'll also begin to notice the subtle shifts in dynamics that happen when you choose not to speak right away. The more you listen, the more you learn, and the more influence you gain. Controlling conversations with silence isn't about manipulation or trying to dominate others. It's about creating space for meaningful communication. It's about listening, understanding, and then responding with precision. It's about knowing that sometimes the best way to influence others is not by talking, but by allowing them the room to express themselves. When you understand the true power of silence, you unlock a new level of communication and influence that will serve you in all areas of your life. Chapter 6. Mastering the Psychology of Silence. Silence is more than the absence of words. It has a presence, a weight, a force of its own. In any conversation, the quietest person is often the one who holds the most power. While others rush to fill the air, the one who masters silence gains control. There is a psychological depth to this, an understanding that words once spoken cannot be taken back, but silence leaves room for thought, for anticipation, for influence. Human nature is wired for reaction. When there is silence, people feel the need to respond. It creates an invisible pressure, drawing out confessions, revealing truths, and exposing intentions. Many people speak out of discomfort rather than necessity. They don't realize that the more they talk, the more they give away about their thoughts, their emotions, their weaknesses. But the person who understands silence knows that it can be used to observe, to measure, to anticipate. People reveal more than they intend when confronted with silence. The mind seeks closure, an end to uncertainty, an answer to an unspoken question. When silence lingers, people will often speak just to break it, offering information they might have otherwise withheld. This is why skilled negotiators, leaders, and those with high emotional intelligence are comfortable with quiet. They know that words carry energy, but silence carries mystery. The power of silence extends beyond conversation. It shapes perception. A person who speaks too much, too quickly, loses authority. Their words blend together, their presence becomes predictable. But someone who knows when to pause, when to listen, when to hold back, creates an aura of depth. Their thoughts seem more valuable, their presence more compelling. They are not merely participating in conversation, they are guiding it without force. Observation is the foundation of silent power. While others speak, the quiet observer is collecting details, the tone of voice, the choice of words, the shifts in body language, the unspoken hesitations. These small signals tell a deeper story than words alone. They reveal hidden emotions, true intentions, and unspoken fears. The ability to read these subtle signs allows a person to understand more than what is said. It becomes possible to predict outcomes, to respond with precision, to act with certainty. Silence also commands respect. People naturally listen more carefully to someone who speaks with deliberation. Their words are chosen rather than spilled. Their pauses are intentional rather than hesitant. This creates authority, a quiet dominance that makes others pay attention. Those who use silence wisely are not ignored. They are watched, studied, and often admired. Their restraint is seen as control, their presence as strength. The discipline to remain silent in key moments requires mental strength. It is tempting to react, to correct, to interject, but the strongest minds understand that restraint is a weapon. It is the difference between reacting impulsively and responding strategically. Words spoken in emotion can damage credibility, while words chosen with care can shape reality. This is the difference between those who speak to fill the air and those who speak to command it. In arguments, silence can be disarming. When faced with anger, the natural instinct is to retaliate, to defend, to match energy with energy. But silence disrupts the pattern. It removes the expected response. The other person, expecting resistance, is left in uncertainty. They must reconsider, adjust, recalibrate. The energy shifts. The one who controls silence controls the rhythm of the exchange. This is why those who remain composed in moments of conflict often emerge with the upper hand. Beyond interactions with others, silence is also a tool for self-mastery. A mind that is always filled with noise, whether from external voices or internal chatter, lacks clarity. Silence creates space for deep thought, for problem solving, for creativity. Many of the greatest minds in history have understood this. They withdrew from distractions, embraced quiet, and used it to refine their thinking. In a world of constant stimulation, the ability to sit in silence is rare, but those who cultivate it gain an unmatched clarity of mind. There is also an element of patience in the mastery of silence. The ability to wait, to observe, to allow situations to unfold without rushing to control them, is a skill that few develop. Many people fear silence because it forces them to confront their own thoughts, their own insecurities, their own truth. But those who embrace it learn that within the quiet lies an untapped strength. Powerful individuals do not compete for attention. They do not demand to be heard. Their silence makes others lean in, wanting to know what they think, what they feel, what they will say next. This kind of quiet presence shifts the balance in any room. The more comfortable a person is with silence, the more they stand out in a world filled with noise. Even in leadership, silence plays a critical role. A leader who speaks constantly loses their impact. But one who listens, who chooses their words with care, who understands the weight of a well-timed pause, this leader inspires trust. People follow those who do not waste words, those who communicate with precision and confidence. Silence, when used correctly, builds credibility. It signals that a person does not need to prove themselves with excessive speech. Their presence, their actions, and their carefully chosen words are enough. In decision-making, silence allows for deeper insight. Those who rush to conclusions often miss details that could change everything. But those who sit in quiet reflection, who allow their minds to process before reacting, make choices with greater wisdom. They see what others overlook. They recognize patterns that others miss. They act not on impulse, but on understanding. Silence also has an effect on relationships. Those who listen more than they speak are often the ones who form the strongest connections. People feel heard, valued, and understood in their presence. They become the ones others seek out for advice, for comfort, for guidance. Their ability to remain quiet allows them to truly hear what others are saying, to pick up on what is left unsaid, to engage with depth rather than superficiality. The practice of silence extends into everyday life. In moments of stress, choosing to remain quiet rather than reacting emotionally preserves energy and composure. In professional settings, holding back unnecessary words makes one appear more confident and intelligent. In social situations, speaking less and listening more creates intrigue and admiration. Silence becomes a tool not just for influence, but for self-respect. A person who understands the psychology of silence knows that power is not in constant speech, but in controlled speech. They do not waste their voice. They do not speak simply to be heard. They use words sparingly, but effectively. Their silence is not emptiness, but presence. In a world that constantly urges people to talk more, to share more, to say more, the one who masters silence becomes the one who stands out. And in that quiet mastery, true strength is found. Chapter 7. Minimal words, maximum impact. The science of smart speaking. Words are powerful, but their impact isn't determined by how many are spoken. In any conversation, the ones who command attention are not those who speak the most, but those who speak with intention. A carefully chosen phrase can shift the mood of a room. A single sentence, delivered at the right moment, can change a person's perspective. The weight of communication doesn't come from the volume of words, it comes from their precision. People often believe that saying more helps them be understood, that talking at length makes them more persuasive. In reality, the opposite is true. The more someone speaks, the more their words lose value. When speech is constant, it becomes background noise, something others stop paying attention to. But when words are used sparingly, they gain significance. They demand attention because they aren't wasted. They carry weight because they are intentional. One of the most valuable communication skills is the ability to express an idea in the fewest words possible. Brevity forces clarity. When there is no room for unnecessary details, thoughts become sharper. The message becomes clear. The listener isn't left to sort through distractions, but is given something direct and meaningful. This is why some of the most influential leaders, thinkers, and speakers throughout history have been those who understood the importance of speaking only when necessary. In any conversation, the goal isn't to fill space, it's to create impact. There is a natural tendency for people to over-explain, to justify their thoughts, to feel the need to elaborate beyond what is needed. But when speech is concise, it signals confidence. It shows that the speaker believes in their words enough not to feel the need to dress them up. Those who speak with fewer words and more meaning are often perceived as more intelligent, more composed, and more in control. The key to making words more powerful isn't just saying less, it's choosing what to say with purpose. Every sentence should serve a function. Every word should add to the meaning. When communication is stripped down to its essence, it becomes more engaging. Listeners don't have to struggle to find the point because the message is direct. There is no excess, no wasted effort, just clarity. Many misunderstand communication as a game of dominance, thinking that whoever speaks the most has the upper hand. But real influence comes from knowing when to speak and when to hold back. Silence, when used strategically, builds anticipation. A pause before a response makes the listener lean in, waiting for what comes next. It creates presence, an unspoken confidence that makes every word matter more. The greatest communicators understand the power of patience. They don't rush to respond. They don't fill silence with unnecessary explanations. Instead, they let their words settle. They allow time for the listener to process. They recognize that sometimes what isn't said carries just as much weight as what is. This ability to resist the urge to overspeak not only strengthens their message, but also gives them a quiet authority that draws people in. Listening is a crucial part of this process. Those who focus on what others are saying, rather than waiting for their turn to speak, develop a deeper understanding of conversations. They pick up on what is left unsaid. They recognize patterns, emotions, and true intentions. This allows them to respond with precision rather than filling the space with empty words. A response that is well thought out is always more effective than a response that is rushed. Choosing words carefully is also a form of discipline. It requires self-awareness, the ability to pause before reacting, and the patience to ensure that what is being said is necessary. Many people speak without thinking, reacting out of habit rather than intention. But those who train themselves to slow down, to measure their words before releasing them, develop a presence that commands respect. Their speech becomes deliberate rather than impulsive. Their words become tools of influence rather than just expressions of thought. The ability to communicate effectively without excess is also a sign of emotional intelligence. When emotions run high, people tend to speak more, to try to explain their feelings, to make their point understood through repetition. But true mastery comes from the ability to control emotions enough to communicate with clarity. Saying only what needs to be said, no more, no less, allows the message to be heard without distraction. It removes the emotional clutter and replaces it with purpose. This skill extends beyond personal conversations and into professional settings. In leadership, those who speak less but say more are often the ones who gain the most respect. Their words are not thrown around carelessly. They are measured, considered, and delivered with impact. Whether in negotiations, meetings, or high-stakes decisions, those who have the ability to speak with clarity and precision are the ones who influence outcomes. It's not just about what is said, but also how it's said. Tone, pacing, and delivery all contribute to the impact of words. A strong message can be lost if delivered poorly, just as a simple phrase can hold immense power if spoken with confidence. Those who understand this use their voice intentionally. They recognize that how something is communicated can often matter just as much as the content itself. Resisting the urge to speak unnecessarily is also a way to build mental discipline. The world is full of noise, filled with people trying to be heard above everyone else. But those who step back, who choose their words carefully, who listen more than they speak, set themselves apart. Their presence becomes stronger, their communication becomes sharper. Their influence grows, not because they speak often, but because when they do, it matters. Being intentional with words also strengthens relationships. People appreciate those who listen, those who don't dominate conversations, those who make their words count. In both personal and professional interactions, speaking with precision fosters trust. It creates an environment where words are valued rather than wasted. It makes others feel heard because the conversation isn't just about filling time, it's about understanding. This practice requires a shift in mindset. Instead of focusing on what to say next, the focus should be on whether speaking is necessary at all. Instead of assuming that more words equal more influence, the understanding should be that fewer words, used wisely, hold more power. Mastering this doesn't mean staying silent, it means speaking with purpose. It means recognizing that impact comes not from how much is said, but from how well it is communicated. The true power of communication is not found in endless speech, but in precision. The most effective communicators are those who understand that value is not in the quantity of words, but in their quality. When words are chosen carefully, they hold weight. When speech is deliberate, it captures attention. When silence is embraced, it becomes a tool of influence. In every conversation, the goal is not to say more, it's to make every word count. Chapter 8. The key to commanding respect and authority. Respect is not something that can be demanded. It's something that must be earned and cultivated through actions, presence, and the way we choose to engage with others. Too often, people mistake loudness or dominance for respect, believing that the more they assert themselves, the more others will value them. But in reality, the opposite is often true. The way to command respect is not through forceful words or constant assertion. It's through quiet confidence and the ability to make others feel valued, heard, and understood. True respect is built on understanding. People respect those who see them, who take the time to listen, and who don't rush to judge or interrupt. Respect comes from knowing that the other person's thoughts, feelings, and experiences are valid. It's about valuing their presence, not just their words. And when you give that respect to others, it naturally comes back to you. People tend to mirror the respect they receive. If you treat others with consideration and care, they will naturally treat you the same way. One of the most effective ways to command respect is by mastering the art of listening. Listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about understanding the emotions, intentions, and meaning behind those words. A person who listens intently doesn't just wait for their turn to speak. They are present, absorbing, and reflecting on what the other person is saying. When you listen in this way, you give the other person the space to be themselves, to express their thoughts without feeling dismissed or rushed. This creates an atmosphere of mutual respect. It shows that you value their contribution and are genuinely interested in what they have to say. When you listen carefully, you gain insight into what matters most to others. You learn their values, their fears, their desires. This understanding forms the foundation for deeper connections, and when you speak, your words are informed by that understanding. They carry more weight because they are grounded in what the other person cares about. You're not just speaking for the sake of speaking, you're speaking with purpose, with consideration for the other person's perspective. This approach doesn't just apply to one-on-one conversations. In groups, in teams, in any setting where multiple people are involved, respect is often determined by how well you listen and how well you make others feel heard. When everyone feels like they have a voice, the entire dynamic changes. People are more likely to collaborate, to contribute, and to engage when they feel respected. And it's your role, as someone who understands the power of silence and active listening, to foster that environment. Commanding respect also involves carrying yourself with confidence, not arrogance, but a quiet, unshakable belief in your worth and in your abilities. People naturally respect those who are sure of themselves, who don't feel the need to constantly prove their value. Confidence doesn't require loud proclamations or constant validation. It's found in the way you present yourself, the way you carry your words, and the way you stand in a room. It's about being comfortable with who you are, and allowing that comfort to radiate outward. When you are confident in your own skin, others are naturally drawn to you, and respect follows. The way you speak, or more importantly, the way you choose not to speak, also plays a critical role in how much respect you command. People tend to respect those who speak thoughtfully and with purpose, rather than those who speak excessively or impulsively. When you choose your words carefully and avoid unnecessary elaboration, people listen. They recognize that you don't waste their time. They begin to trust you because they know you will only speak when it's important. This is a form of self-respect. It shows that you value not only your own words, but also the time and attention of others. This doesn't mean that you should become silent or withdrawn. It means that you should be selective with your words and be intentional in your communication. When you speak, make it count. And when you listen, listen with full attention. By doing so, you foster an environment of mutual respect, one where people are eager to engage with you, to hear your thoughts, and to be part of the conversation. In turn, you begin to attract the respect you deserve. One of the most powerful ways to command respect in any situation is through the ability to stay calm under pressure. When others are panicking, rushing, or reacting emotionally, the person who remains composed stands out. Calmness is a sign of control. It signals that you are not easily rattled, that you can handle whatever comes your way without losing your cool. People respect those who can maintain their poise in difficult situations. It shows strength, resilience, and a deep sense of self-assurance. And the best part is that calmness doesn't require any words. It's something that is communicated through your body language, your tone, and your presence. When you remain calm, you convey a sense of confidence that others naturally gravitate toward. Another important element of commanding respect is consistency. People respect those who are reliable, who do what they say they will do, and who are steady in their actions. Consistency is a reflection of integrity. It shows that you are someone who can be counted on. It builds trust and strengthens your reputation. When you follow through on your commitments, when you consistently demonstrate the qualities that you value, others begin to see you as someone worthy of respect. They know that your words align with your actions, and that is the foundation of trust. Respect also requires a level of vulnerability. People respect those who are willing to admit their mistakes, to acknowledge their flaws, and to learn from their experiences. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, but in reality, it is one of the strongest traits a person can possess. It shows that you are not trying to be perfect or to put on a facade. It shows that you are human and that you are willing to grow and evolve. People are drawn to those who are genuine and authentic, who do not hide behind a mask but instead embrace their true selves. In any setting, whether professional or personal, the way you make others feel is the true measure of respect. The most powerful people are not those who demand respect, but those who inspire it. They do this by listening deeply, by speaking with purpose, by remaining calm in the face of adversity, and by staying true to their values. When you embody these qualities, you naturally draw respect to you. People will recognize your worth, not through force, but through the way you carry yourself and the way you make them feel. Respect is not about being louder, more assertive, or more forceful. It's about being present, being authentic, and showing others that you value them. When you do this consistently, respect will follow, and as you continue to cultivate respect in your relationships, in your work, and in your life, you'll discover that the more you give, the more you receive. Chapter 9. How to dominate any room without being loud. Presence is more powerful than volume. In any room, the one who commands attention isn't always the loudest person, but the one who carries an unshakable sense of certainty. People are drawn to those who move with purpose, those who don't feel the need to constantly explain themselves or prove their worth. The moment you realize that your energy, your confidence, and your awareness speak louder than words, you begin to control the way people perceive you without having to force anything. Silence is often underestimated. When you are quiet, people naturally start paying more attention. They wonder what you're thinking, what you've observed, what you might say next. Unlike someone who constantly speaks to fill the space, a person who knows when to hold back is far more intriguing. This doesn't mean withdrawing from conversations or avoiding engagement. It means choosing your words wisely, making sure that when you do speak, it carries weight. Every unnecessary word you remove from a sentence increases the impact of the words that remain. People respect those who don't waste their time. When you say only what needs to be said, people listen. They recognize that you have thought about your words, that you don't speak just to be heard, but to add value. This makes them more likely to seek your opinion, to want your perspective, because they know you won't just give them empty talk. The less you say, the more space you create for others to listen carefully when you do decide to speak. In any social setting, confidence comes from comfort in your own silence. Many try to dominate a room by talking over others, but real presence comes from knowing you don't have to. The moment you stop trying to be noticed is the moment people start noticing you. It's not about shrinking away or being passive. It's about standing firm in the knowledge that your presence alone is enough. When you embrace that, your energy changes. You walk differently, you make eye contact with certainty, and you engage with people in a way that draws them in naturally. Every room has a rhythm. Conversations move in patterns, voices rise and fall, and people often talk just to fill the gaps. If you tune into this, you'll start to notice that those who speak less actually control the flow. They guide conversations without force, simply by being the ones who observe more than they react. When you are intentional with your words, people follow your lead without realizing it. They start mirroring your energy, slowing down their own speech, taking a moment to think before they respond. This is influence at its most subtle but most effective level. Non-verbal communication is just as powerful as the words you choose to say. The way you hold yourself, the way you nod, the expressions you make, all of these things shape how people perceive you. If you sit still and listen intently, people will feel your presence more than if you constantly interject. If you maintain eye contact without wavering, people will sense your confidence without you having to say a word. The less you rely on words, the more people will pick up on these subtler forms of communication, and the more they will be drawn to your energy. Authority is not about forcing people to respect you, it's about making them want to. The people who are truly influential in any group are not those who dominate conversations, but those whose words carry a weight that others naturally respect. This comes from mastering restraint, from knowing when to speak and when to hold back. When you learn to do this, you'll find that others naturally defer to you, that they seek your insight, that they value your perspective, because they know it won't be wasted on unnecessary noise. Mastering presence also means mastering control over your emotions. When you react impulsively, you give away your power. People who are quick to anger, quick to defend themselves, quick to fill the silence with explanations, all reveal a lack of internal control. On the other hand, those who take a breath, pause before responding, and choose their words with care show a level of composure that commands attention. Composure signals strength. It tells the world that you are not easily shaken, that you do not operate from a place of insecurity, but from a deep understanding of yourself. People gravitate towards certainty. In any conversation, the person who is most certain has the most influence. This certainty is not about knowing everything, it's about being comfortable in what you do know and not feeling the need to prove anything. When you are at peace with not always speaking, with not always having to be the loudest in the room, others start to trust you more. They see you as someone who doesn't waste words, who listens more than they speak, and who has the patience to observe before acting. Powerful people are often the quietest in the room. They are not silent out of fear or insecurity, but out of confidence in their presence. They understand that their words are more impactful when used sparingly, that their energy influences the atmosphere more than their voice ever could. When you embrace this, you become someone people naturally respect. They look to you for cues, they value your input, and they remember what you say, because you don't speak just to be heard, you speak to make a difference. In any environment, whether it's a business meeting, a social gathering, or an everyday conversation, the ability to control a room without being loud is an invaluable skill. It requires discipline, patience, and self-awareness. The more you practice it, the more you will notice how much power exists in your restraint. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You don't have to fight for attention to be noticed. You simply have to master the art of being present, of observing before speaking, and of carrying yourself in a way that makes people want to listen. The world is full of noise, but those who know how to navigate it with quiet confidence are the ones who leave the strongest impact. When you learn to speak less and command more, you will find that you no longer have to try so hard to be seen or heard, because people will naturally gravitate toward your presence. Chapter 10. How to outsmart anyone without saying a word. The most intelligent minds in the world understand one simple truth: silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. Those who know how to withhold words, how to let others reveal themselves first, and how to observe instead of rush to respond, always hold the advantage. In every conversation, every negotiation, and every interaction, the person who speaks the least often knows the most. The power to outsmart anyone doesn't come from arguing louder or proving intelligence with excessive words. It comes from the ability to remain composed, to read between the lines, and to make decisions based on what others fail to notice. People give away far more than they realize when they speak. They expose their thoughts, their emotions, and their insecurities in subtle ways. Most are too busy talking to recognize this, but those who choose to listen instead of react gain insight that others overlook. Every time someone speaks, they reveal patterns in their thinking, small hesitations, or unconscious signals that betray their true feelings. Those who stay quiet long enough can pick up on these clues, using them to understand people at a level beyond words. This is why the ones who talk the most are rarely the ones in control. They are too focused on expressing themselves to realize how much they are giving away. Observing without rushing to respond creates an unshakable advantage. When you do not immediately react, you force others to reveal more. They start to fill the silence, sometimes saying more than they intended. They become uncomfortable with the lack of response, and in an effort to keep the conversation going, they expose what they truly think. In negotiations, in confrontations, and even in casual discussions, this is where power is built. The person who remains composed holds the leverage because they are not acting out of impulse. Instead, they are analyzing, waiting, and choosing their words with precision. A well-placed pause is often more powerful than a long explanation. When someone makes a bold statement and you do not react immediately, you create a moment of psychological pressure. Most people are used to immediate validation or resistance. When neither comes, they begin to question themselves. They may backtrack, elaborate, or adjust their tone, unknowingly revealing their uncertainty. This is how those who understand the weight of silence subtly shift the dynamic in their favor. Being unpredictable is one of the strongest advantages you can have. When you talk too much, people can anticipate your thoughts, your emotions, and your reactions. But when you speak less, when you measure your words, you become difficult to read. This makes people more cautious around you, unsure of what you are thinking or how you might respond. It forces them to treat you with a level of respect that those who overshare rarely receive. A person who is hard to read is a person who is hard to manipulate. People who lack self-control feel the need to react to everything immediately. Their emotions dictate their responses, and in doing so, they reveal exactly how they can be influenced. But those who master restraint, who do not feel the need to prove themselves with constant speech, position themselves as the ones who control the pace of a conversation. They allow others to talk first, to reveal their motivations, and to make mistakes. Meanwhile, they remain steady, watching, absorbing, and waiting for the right moment to speak. Knowing what to say is important, but knowing what not to say is often more valuable. Every unnecessary word weakens the impact of the ones that matter. The ability to remain silent when others expect a reaction, to pause when others are eager to respond, gives you an undeniable edge. People remember the words that are carefully chosen, the statements that carry weight, and the moments where silence made a message even clearer. Confidence is built through certainty in your own mind, not through proving yourself to others. The loudest voices in the room are often the most insecure, desperate to be noticed and validated. True confidence is quiet, composed, and unwavering. It does not need recognition because it exists regardless of external approval. When you cultivate this mindset, you naturally outthink those who are controlled by their need to be heard. You see what they cannot, you understand what they overlook, and you move with a level of awareness that makes you untouchable. Patience in conversation is one of the most overlooked skills. People often assume that quick responses demonstrate intelligence, But true intelligence lies in taking the time to process, to analyze, and to respond with intention. Those who speak immediately often regret their words later. Those who pause, even for a moment, gain clarity before they act. In this space between impulse and response, wisdom is formed. The ability to wait, to sit with discomfort, to resist the urge to react emotionally, is what separates those who control conversations from those who are controlled by them. The most effective thinkers and leaders in history understood the power of restraint. They knew that information is a form of currency, and those who give it away too freely diminish their own value. Instead of speaking without purpose, they chose to observe first, to let others reveal themselves, and to speak only when necessary. This is not about deception, it is about discipline. It is about recognizing that every word you say has an impact and choosing to use that power with precision. You do not need to argue to win. You do not need to be the loudest to be heard. Those who truly understand the game of influence know that the most powerful moves are often the quietest. It is in the moments of restraint, in the pauses between speech, in the ability to let others expose their thoughts first, that real strength is found. The ability to outsmart anyone is not about being the most intelligent person in the room. It is about being the one who understands people better than they understand themselves. It is about listening when others talk too much, observing when others react too quickly, and waiting when others rush ahead. The ones who master this are the ones who always seem to be one step ahead, not because they know everything, but because they know how to see what others miss. Silence is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is not a lack of engagement. It is a tool, a weapon, and a skill that only a few truly understand. When you learn to use it effectively, you realize that you do not need to outtalk anyone to outthink them. You do not need to prove anything when you already know the outcome. You simply need to observe, to wait, and to let others show their hands before you ever reveal yours.